a lot of my opportunities have just come through, meeting the right people and just having the will to learn and to be willing to be a sponge and soak up all the knowledge that I can, but also being willing to, reach back and share that information too.
So in the wrestling business, there's a terminology we use called breaking the fourth wall. And what that means is you are essentially letting people know what happens behind the scenes. So I'm going to break the fourth wall right now. Initially, I was trying to figure out, when I put together the idea to do this podcast, I was like, okay, how am I going to interview my guests? So I was sitting in the group chat. I said, who has Skype? And my next guest responded, give me a second, let me download that. And my next guest, ladies and gentlemen, is none other than Brandon Williams of Bowie State University. Brandon was so gracious to allow me to use him as a test, and that everything just turned out well, that we decided to keep it. And I said, you know what? You were going to be a guest on the show anyway, so I don't have to re-record you. We're just going to use this. So coming up, Brandon, who is, like I said, a student from Bowie State University, but also he is the student representative of the National Association of Black Journalists Sports Task Force. So he'll talk about that. We'll talk about how we met, and we'll talk about what he's doing now, as well as what he would like to be doing as soon as he graduates from Bowie State. Ladies and gentlemen, Brandon Williams.
Man, so I know it just like grabbed you up, like, hey man, I need you to be on this show. One of the many reasons I wanted you on here is because you have a great story, man. A lot of people, we hear about the professionals who are doing their thing and we hear about their journey. A lot of times it's rare that we actually get to talk to people while they're in the beginning of transitioning from student to professional, and I kind of caught you right at the perfect time. You is this your last year at Bowie?
Yes.
And it seemed like just yesterday you just started, man.
Right.
You under your resume, you covered 2 championship teams. You've been able to cover Maryland. Before you went to Bowie, we was working together at Fox Sports. 1340 Hopewell, Virginia, but now it's also 96.9 FM. But yeah, right down in Hopewell. Shout out to Glenn Thomas, sports director down there, where you covered, just on social media, you've covered college football, NFL, NBA, college basketball, March Madness, NBA Finals, then going on the ground, covering the Redskins. You also covered the Nationals. And then if times we needed, you even threw some golf content on the channel. So you've done it all, and you started off as writing. What led you to this passion for media?
I'll probably have to say what led me to it was kind of taking the love I have for sports and my addiction, you could call it, for watching television growing up, and just kind of combining the two and saying, I want to take both of these things and combine them together and make a career out of it. So I started researching and looking up some stuff as to what it would take to become a sports analyst, to become a sports anchor, reporter, things of that nature. And one of the things that I had to have, of course, was a bachelor's degree, but also had to have numerous skills such as writing, reporting, having production skills that could carry over into the workforce. A lot of experience that I need to get to this point. I definitely needed social media, because nowadays in this business, if you don't have social media, then you're doing something wrong. And I think that a lot of my opportunities have just come through, meeting the right people and just having the will to learn and to be willing to be a sponge and soak up all the knowledge that I can, but also being willing to, reach back and share that information too. I I definitely don't take anything for granted, whether it's good, bad, indifferent, that I've learned over the course of these last few years, covering all the stuff that I've covered, and, making connections, and just being a student of the game is definitely kind of molded and shaped me into the reporter that I am today. I can't really say too much about how all these experiences have helped me, and what it definitely means to have all these experiences on my resume. And I will say that, there were certain times where I kind of questioned myself, but I just had to remind myself, why I started.
So, Brandon, you talked about meeting the right people. And I go back to the time when we first met. So for those who do, I've said this on the initial episode of the show, that I had a career at ESPN for 2 years. So many of you know that by now if you listen to that episode. And one thing you will know that during my time I was in social media. So it was the last Tuesday. And I'm a man of faith. I'm not ashamed of that. It's my show. So I'm going to go ahead and say it. I believe God put Brandon and I together. The last Tuesday, any other time, I would have been working in the evening, working the 4 p.m. to 1 a.m. shift. However, on this particular day, Brock Lesnar was in town for
I think it was SummerSlam.
SummerSlam. Yep, you're right. It was him and Undertaker. The rematch from WrestleMania 30 where Brock ended the streak. And I asked my manager on that Monday, I said, hey, we got Brock coming in. Can I come in early? We got 3 people. It's 3 of us that's going to be working an evening shift. Can I come in early and help? Or could I just come in when Brock's here and I'll go back home and come back to work? Well, shout out to Steve Brayman. He was a diehard wrestling fan just as much as I am. Matter of fact, he gave me Daniel Bryan's Yes book. He said, sure, you can come in and help. So after we got finished with the Brock stuff, I forget why. I don't know if it was during the car wash or whatever, but I forget whatever reason. I was over there near the studio, and shout out to our friend Nikki Peterson. Oh, excuse me, she got married, and I can't. Her last name, escapes me right now. But shout out to our friend Nicole.
Yeah.
He was working with Nicole that day, and Marcus. Shout out to Marcus Matthews. And
Shout out.
while you was working, because I remember seeing you, and I was like, oh, okay, somebody here to visit. And I just, and then when I saw you with Nikki, we talked for a little bit, and you found out that I was from Baltimore. You told me you was from Maryland. I said, oh, okay, cool. He was like, well, can we exchange information? And that's what I admired about you, because it showed me that you knew immediately connections was important in this business. You knew immediately that, hey, okay, this guy's in Baltimore, that proximity. And we kept in contact. We've been brothers ever since. When I started working with the Fox Sports gig, you was the first recruit before we even took it to a level where we had your Ashleys, your Kelseys, your Renees, your, shout out to the Fab Five, but also, the Flex Zone, Hugh, Dwayne. Before we even had them, you were the first recruit, because you said, well, I'm just trying to get my feet wet. I told Glenn, boom, you started writing for us. It was great. Then as we started expanding, anything I needed done, you was there. But I always admired the fact that you were never afraid to ask questions. Now, you talked about, evolving. What was your glass breaking moment? Because I watched you just flourish. And I have to say, I'm going to say it publicly, I'm proud. I watched you become the student, the student ambassador for NABJ Sports Task Force, which is a big deal. NABJ, over 5,000 members, I believe. Some of your biggest names of color, that's Black media professionals, we're talking Jamel Hill, we're talking Roland Martin, we're talking Rob Parker. These are all former NABJ journalists of the year or sports journalists of the year. What was your glass breaking moment for you in your career, Brandon?
Oh man.
And I know you got more coming, but I have to say at this point, because I've watched you as a student and I've been watching you take control and lead Bowie State to new levels and new heights. But what was the glass breaking moment?
I think the moment where I broke the glass was when when I had went to. I probably wouldn't even say it was when I toured ESPN, man. It was probably when I went to my first convention in Detroit, and that was my first time being in a room just surrounded by a whole bunch of Black media professionals that were doing the same things that I aspired to do, and just having the opportunity to have them at my disposal for a whole entire week where I could actually talk to these people and it not be awkward was just, mind-boggling to me. And I think that it was over the course of that week where I realized, like, hey, this is actually attainable. This is something that I could actually do. And it just gave me a whole bunch of confirmation that, I'm not in this alone. One, because there's a buku of us. I mean, the list just goes on and on. Ashley, Renee, Kelsey, you, Dwayne, Hugh, Andre, Dwayne. The list goes on and on. And I think when I finally met some of the other student members that I've been in a group chat with, and just hanging out with them and asking them questions and learning from them, it kind of motivated me to come back to Bowie State and say, hey, they got student chapters all over at these other schools. We need to have one. And believe it or not, there was an effort to try to put one together in previous years, but it just never, came through. But I said, okay, I'm going to be different. I'm going to make sure that this actually, just doesn't grow legs and just stay stagnant. I'm going to make sure that it grows legs and it actually moves. So I'm proud to say that we got established in the spring of 2019. So I'm one of I think we have like 5 founding members, one of the 5 founding members of BSU ABJ. And like you said, there's still a lot more moments to come. But the other moment that I must say that I'm during that same convention is when I got my internship offer with NBC Sports.
That's amazing.
Yeah, it was. I didn't even realize it, and I've only told a few people this story. Now, I might have told you this too, but I was at a lunch with some other students and some reps from ESPN, right? And I got an email from a recruiter from the NBC booth. Now, mind you, prior to this, ESPN was the end all be all for me. I ain't want to work nowhere else. I was just ESPN. I kept on banging on that mantle like it was mine already. But I got the email while I was sitting at the table, right? And I was like, oh man, I really don't want to leave, because they were asking me to come back up to the career fair. So I was like, okay, I got a decision to make. I could leave and come back, because they only said it would be like a 5-minute conversation. So I could either leave, come back, or just leave and just stay up there and see what they got to say. So I get one of the person that invited me to the lunch. I ran into her as I was leaving out the restaurant, and she said, hey, make sure you just stay in touch. Thank you for coming, blah, 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 blah. So I thank her, and I go keep it moving to the career fair. So I get to the booth, and the recruiter, he says, hey, we want to offer you a spot in our internship program for the summer of 2019 and a spot in our fellowship program as well. Man, that was when I knew that this was for me. And that was like one of my moments where I was like, okay, God is real. God is real right now because my resume at that moment in time compared to the hundreds of other students that were there, they thought was good enough to where I should have gotten an opportunity to intern there.
I'm gonna stop you right there real quick, right? A lot of times recruiters look at resume and they look at the on paper. That's the basic recruiter. Now, I don't think I'll get in trouble for revealing this, but I'll say this. I gotta pick my words. I've learned from some of the best recruiters in the business that you read the details of the resume and you see the skills. I can tell you, I've seen your resume, and obviously I know your work.
Mm-hmm.
Somebody who looks at that, they know that your resume was just as good as everybody else's because of the simple fact that you can do all the skills: edit, shoot, produce, and talk. So that's what I gotta say, which makes me proud. And like I said, I'm gonna let you finish the story. And I understand what you're saying as far as your resume, compared to somebody else's. But when you look at the skill set and look at what Brandon Williams can do, that's why you won.
True. I could definitely give with that, and I appreciate that. But at that time, I was still in, and I still keep this mindset every day. I was in the mindset of, I'm always in competition with the next, because as cool as I am with some of these other students, I know good and well that some of them are just as skilled, if not better, than me. So I always made sure that I stayed on my P's and Q's and made sure that whatever moment appeared or whatever moment presented itself to where I could shine, that I made sure that I did everything in my power to make sure that I did just that. And a lot of times it's not easy going into a situation with that mentality, because we're in a business where, yes, you're in competition with other people, but at the same time, you have to be okay with sharing the knowledge. And that's something that I've definitely had to come to grips with, over the years, because I'm the type of person where, one, I'm very competitive, because that's just naturally how I am. And I played sports growing up too, so that's just the competitor in me. I wanted to be the best at whatever I touched. So just having that sheer will to be at my best at any given moment kind of helped me when it came to presenting myself and engaging with recruiters and others in conversation, and just showing that, hey, I can not only just talk this talk, I can actually walk it too. Because a lot of times nowadays, and some people might give me flack for this, mainly students, is that I don't see as much hunger amongst a lot of students that I'm around every day. Maybe a handful of students, I will say, have that hunger. But some of these other ones, I know that I could run laps around them. But I don't say that directly to their face, because, one, I always remain humble, but at the same time, I don't lose my competitive edge. So that kind of explains why I go so hard the way I go.
As somebody, and this is another one where I have to, I want to watch my words, because I don't want to put anything or anyone down. But we went to similar schools. I went to Morgan State, you went to Bowie State, right?
Yeah.
A lot of times there's an attitude, and I don't think it's just at HBCUs, but I think a lot of times it's anywhere, that people expect a handout. And I think, because we dealt with the same thing, I could say one of the things about the wrestling realm that shined bright at Morgan State, the show was actually created while Dwayne and I were students. Shout out to the real Dwayne Allen. The show was created while we were students in the studio class, TV studio class. That's where we developed the show. By the time we hit our final year, we was working on a documentary on how we kind of got started. So we just, but the thing was that the teachers always said was like, wow, you guys are hungry because you literally took something that you're passionate about and created your own opportunity. And you look at, I look at you you enjoy writing, but you took it a step further. You took it to help develop your skills. And that's what one thing I would tell people, like, yeah, you want to be on camera, but you got to learn how to write. You listen. A lot of people didn't listen. And a lot of times you are going to find people that's not as hungry. And I think it's phenomenal that you are one of the founding members of the Black Journalists Association for your school, because that's going to speak volumes. And what you're doing is you're creating a legacy. And I know you don't do it for that. I know you don't do it for the glory. You just enjoy giving to the next person,
Yeah, I do. And I do enjoy giving it back, giving the torch back, and seeing other students, carry the mantle. But it definitely makes it all worthwhile when I see somebody that, I helped just a little bit, and they just skyrocket and just exploding out of nowhere and becoming this superstar sensation where it's like, okay, now everybody's trying to get at this person because of the little bit that I was able to do for them. Now, not to say that they didn't have any skills before, me and them might have met, but every time you come into contact with somebody that has just a little bit more experience than you, or has just a little bit more knowledge than you walk away from that conversation feeling a little bit more polished, a little bit more empowered, a little bit more aware of the responsibility that you have as a broadcaster or as a journalist. And it is of the most vital importance that you get your reps, that you practice every day, whether it's 5 minutes, 10 minutes, or maybe an hour if you can spare that type of time with the type of schedule that I got. But always, make time to practice the craft, because this business is always changing. And if you're not staying up to date with the new techniques and the different ways to go about doing the business of journalism and broadcasting, you're going to get left behind. And by the time you have caught up, there's a new wave coming after another and another and another. So it's always good to stay on your P's and Q's and to just keep in contact with people that are already pros in the business, because it's one thing to have connections with other students from different schools who have great experiences just like you do. But when you have a connection with somebody that's already in the pros, that's a definite added advantage that you have, especially if you have the type of relationship with them where you can just pick up the phone and call them at any time and they'll pick up for you. That's huge.
Absolutely. One of the things, I don't try to talk about myself too much, but I can say when I was in school, I went to school for video production. Go to ESPN, was a production assistant. After being a production assistant, while being a production assistant, you rotate. So my last rotation was social media, which led me to my position now, Johns Hopkins, doing social media content for the Media Relations channel. But it's essentially a public relations job, which I would have never thought. PR. My manager said, "You ever thought about doing sports PR?" I said, "I never even thought about doing PR, period." It just happened to fall in because of the way the business changed. And because the business of social media changed, that's what allowed me to be in a position that I'm in, and that's the same thing like with you. You're so marketable, essentially. I remember hearing you say, "Hey man, I'm trying to do this in Photoshop. I'm trying to do this in After Effects or Premiere." What's been your greatest moment as far as, a student at Bowie? What's been your greatest moment? What was your favorite story that you worked on?
Oh man, I think it's so many. It's hard to just kind of nail them into one. Obviously, the number one on my list would have to be covering a generational talent in Amir Hall.
Okay.
You don't find guys like that in the county that you grew up into like that every day. Like that's a once in a generation type of player. And I'm gonna say this, and because it still bothers me, I don't know why this guy went undrafted in this previous NFL draft.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know why he was. I don't know why he was not at somebody's training camp, practice. I don't know why he didn't get a tryout, whatever. Somebody needs to give this man an opportunity because he can play. Now, having said that, the best moment I think was covering that championship game when they made it to the championship against Fayetteville last year, and the records that he broke, that he set himself. Actually, he set some records the previous year, and for him to break those records that he set himself just showed, one layer of the onion that was him. And then when the championship game came around, we saw a totally different element to his game. We didn't just see Amir the passer. We saw Amir the runner, the game general. And there was a moment early in the regular season where they were going up against Winston-Salem. And this was the play where I call a miracle play. It had been a tight game all through all four quarters. And Bowie's defense had gotten 3 key stops in the fourth. And this was like the third stop they had got. So Bowie's offense back on the field. Amir throws 2 passes, one for like a gain of 5 yards, and then the next one is a throw for a first down. Then he scrambles for about 35 yards, gets a first down. Now we're in Winston-Salem territory. Very next play, they call timeout. And they come back on the field, and he throws a game-winning touchdown. That was a moment where I was like, you know what, this guy has it. This guy has it. Now, another moment I would say was, I think it was probably covering our bowling team, who is coming off yet another championship winning season and are probably embarking on another season where they're probably going to make another run for a championship. Now, their obstacle that they faced was when their longtime head coach had passed away.
Mm-hmm.
And that hit them pretty hard. It did. But those girls, they rallied around each other. They pulled it together for him. And that was their 4th straight championship victory. And having the chance to interview them and talk to them about what coach meant to them and just what it took for them to get back to that place, even after, dealing with his passing and stuff like that. It just goes to show you that some of these student athletes are some incredible people. Yeah, we always want to praise people for what they can do, but sometimes we never praise people for who they are. And that's the thing that I can say about these people that I've covered at Bowie, is that I just don't praise them for their abilities. I actually praise them because of who they are as people.
Yep. Man, that's amazing, man. And like I said, a lot of people, some people don't get that opportunity to have like those groundbreaking moments in college, let alone HBCU like Bowie State, and to see the opportunities you've been given. How would you say, like, do you guys get a lot of good equipment there, or are you using your own stuff? Like, how's that been going
on? Like many HBCUs, we're not perfect, not by a long shot. We do have our challenges with equipment not always being there, because some pieces of equipment go missing, some end up being broken, or know how it goes. Sometimes equipment just goes missing and we don't know why. But I always made sure that, if I rented out a camera or something, I always made sure that I did my best to, take care of it and to use it properly. I always, ask people questions as to like, hey, am I holding this right? Or am I doing something right? Or if I'm doing this wrong, can you help me out and fix it? And I think the reason why it was so easy for them to just, trust me with it was because I actually took the time to work with the people at the campus television station and help them with video shoots and interviews and shows that were being recorded during class time. I went the extra mile to not only make sure that, our campus run TV station is shining, but it also kind of helped polish me a little bit to make sure that, I added an extra layer to my game. So now, not only am I able to talk in front of the camera, I can also work behind the scenes too and show you what you're doing wrong, what you're doing right, and just giving more effort and showing that you want it really goes a long way. It really does, and I think now since then I've been able to cover two CIAA basketball tournaments.
Mm-hmm.
I covered two CIAA football championships, and I've been a shooter and reporter for each one.
Okay.
For each one.
Now, how would you say social media has helped your career, especially with your connections at NABJ? Because I'm going to go ahead and say it. When we were in Miami, I saw that you was a star. The moment you arrived that Wednesday, you came down, you just got to the hotel. You're still in your hooping shorts and your plain clothes with your bags. And I'm sitting up there in my suit. It's my birthdays. I had to make sure I was straight. And here you come, and all of a sudden, Brandon, everybody from all over the place. How would you say social media has helped you as far as with your relationships with your peers and mentors?
I definitely will say that it's definitely given me an opportunity to put, a name with the face and just being able to, meet everybody and just not only expand my following on social media, but to also expand my network has been a humongous help. And I honestly don't know what it was, man. I think when you just put hashtag NABJ in your bio and you see somebody else with the same thing, it's like, oh, hey family, let me follow you back. But I honestly sometimes I wonder why other student journalists put me on such this high pedestal, because I'm like, yo, I'm still a student just like y'all. I've just been blessed with certain opportunities, but yet you're putting me up on this pedestal like I've reached the pinnacle, when I feel like I'm just barely scratching the surface of what I could become. And people may say that I'm being too modest or stuff like that, but I genuinely feel that way, because there are numerous students that are very talented and have great experiences. Like prime example, Tony Benton Jr., who just got a new job, right? Yeah, shout out to Tony, man. Tony, he's very talented. My boy Cecil, he's very talented. My boy, my boy Mello, my boy Avery, my boy Jared, Jamal. I know I'm probably missing some other names too.
First of all, I just want to say shout out to all this Black excellence that's going on, and the brotherhood that we have right here at NABJ. You hear about a lot of times that you see, I'm from the city of Baltimore, so unfortunately I see a lot of people killing and shooting, but you just named out a bunch of great positive brothers, so I had to definitely shout them out.
Oh yeah, absolutely, man. I mean,
and shout out to the sisters too. Definitely.
Oh yeah, there are plenty of sisters out here. There's too many to name, but just to name a few, my girl Kayla, Jasmine Styles, Janae Adams. You got Jay Jackson. You got Christina Ford. You got Josephine, my girl Josephine out of DC. You got Renee, who's holding it down with her own podcast at Fox. It's just so many women in sports, man, and it's great to see the strides that they're making, because a lot of times, in previous years, women weren't looked at as powerhouses in sports because of it being a male dominated profession. But when once I started seeing this wave of women just putting their mark on the business, I just had to bow down and say, hey, y'all got it.
Yeah,
y'all got it. I salute y'all.
Absolutely, man. So, I ain't gonna keep you too much longer, but I have to ask you this. First, foremost, I'm gonna ask you the question that you will be asked probably for the next 20 years. Where do you see yourself in 5 years? In a perfect world, where do you see yourself in 5 years?
In my own perfect world, I see myself as the man at either at a network, or the main sports guy at a news station, or main sports guy in a market that everybody just loves to tune into to hear the passion and to hear, the stories that I like to tell. And, just really showing them that, I can not only do this job, but I love it. And I think people could really see that I genuinely love this business by the way I go so hard for it, by the way I talk about it so heavily on my social medias, and by just, doing the little things right, because the little things, believe it or not, will propel you to those goals that you may have for the next 5 years. I definitely would like to be in a top 10 market. I will say that top 10 market will not hurt at all. And I know that there's a lot of expectations that comes along with that, but I believe I can take it. I'm a big boy. I can do this. I've been preparing for this since when I start college, since the fall of 2014. It's now the fall of 2019. I think I've put in some work, and I've grinded enough to the point where I can say, I'm ready to hang with the big boys.
All right. So now I gotta ask you this, because the world is listening. What's 5 fun facts about Brandon Williams?
5 fun facts about me. I think maybe the first one, and a lot of people don't even know this, is that I wrestled in high school for 1 season. Yes, I did. When I was born, my eyes weren't the color that they are now. They were blue, and then they changed from blue to, I think, gray or green, and now they're hazel. That's 2. 3 is I have this strange love for animals that people don't necessarily want to go near. You know what I'm saying? I like snakes, I like lizards, I like some reptiles and stuff like that. Even the ones that people try to stay from, I like them.
So you're gonna have those as pets?
I may get a lizard.
Okay.
I may get a lizard as a pet, but I also want a dog too. I also want a Rottweiler as a pet, as a dog. That's 3. 4th fact about me. I don't even know if this is a fun fact, but it's an interesting story. One of my colleagues who had this preconceived notion of what my voice would sound like when he actually met me in person or seen me for the first time in person, he was like, yo, when I first heard you talk, I was not expecting your voice to be as deep as it was. So at first I was like, well, hey, with me, is what you hear is what you get. So I think that would probably be number 4, is that my voice is unique as opposed to how I look.
Okay.
And last little fun fact about me. I really don't know. I haven't really done a whole lot. I haven't really done a whole lot yet.
Okay.
Yet, I will say. But if I had to say something, I would probably say that I got to meet Stephen A. Smith in August of 2015, and I believe the date was August 18th.
Mm-hmm.
I think it was August 18th. Yeah, because I was saying the same day I met you. I think it was August 18th, 2015. Yeah.
Oh wow! Oh, so you met him that day when you came? Oh yeah, because you was with Marcus.
Yeah. Yes, I was following him everywhere, making his daily rounds and stuff like that. So he like during the time when he was there at the full time, he had a whole lot that he would do throughout the day, from doing First Take, and then he would go watch His and Hers with Nikki. Then he would go from there to help Carrie Champion with her podcast. Then after he left Carrie for her podcast, then he would go help Stephen A. with his radio show and take some of the clips from the show that were some like the best segments of the day and put them out on SoundCloud or put them out on his Facebook page and his Twitter page and stuff like that. So yeah, I kind of just basically saw, what a day in the life of a social media producer was like at ESPN.
Mm-hmm. Wow. Well, Brandon, I'm definitely glad that you lend me your time. So, spoiler alert, folks, this was actually just a test at first, but it sounds so good. I felt like we gotta share this with the public.
Yeah.
I was like,
to people, let them know.
Yeah, I was, testing out the podcast, and I said, let's test out the way we're going to do this. But, Brandon was just so good. Answered, he was the one that responded in the group chat and was like, yeah, what you need. So, as the good books always say, be ye also ready. You can tell me
right.
Chat. And he was definitely ready. So I definitely appreciate you, little bro. I love you for that, or for everything, man. Let the people know where they can find you.
You guys can find me on social media at BWillMedia, BWILL Media, on Twitter and on Instagram. And you can like me on Facebook at Brandon Williams, BWillMedia TV. And my website is BWillMediaTV.com. That's where you can see some of my writing, some of my thoughts on the latest and greatest in sports, whether it's college, professional, or even high school too, because I have covered a couple of high school gigs too.
All right, well, ladies and gentlemen, that is Brandon Williams. Brandon, thank you for joining me on here today, man.
No problem, bro. Appreciate you. Love you always. And yeah, I'll see you in the group chat.
Another episode in the books. Ladies and gentlemen, thank you for tuning in to this episode of Breaking Through Glass Ceilings with Brian H. Make sure you guys are following Brandon at BWillMedia on all social media platforms. And here's something. This is episode 3, and it's just announced in case you didn't catch the social media announcements. This is now available on iHeartRadio. So some of your main platforms you can catch this show: Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Google Podcasts, Anchor, of course, and now iHeartRadio. And there's also a YouTube link which you can watch or listen, I should say. But coming up, episode 4, the one, the only Miss Renee P. Washington. So we'll learn about Renee, who is the host of Beyond the Headlines. She will talk about how she got started, her career, as well as how she was an All-American in soccer and making the transition to journalism. So, ladies and gentlemen, thank you for joining me on another episode. And you know what I have to let you know? Do not let anybody prevent you from breaking through the glass ceiling.